In 1721, smallpox was killing 1 in 7 people it infected in colonial Boston, turning the bustling port city into a gravediggers could work. The disease did not discriminate. Rich, poor, young, old, everyone was vulnerable. And no one in the American colonies had any idea how to stop it. This is the story of Onesimus, an enslaved African man who brought variolation to America, and the violent backlash that followed. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is know something your masters do not. Welcome back to the lab, my curious test subjects. Today we are talking about one of the strangest collisions in American medical history, where knowledge, race, religion, and explosives all met in one very tense moment. You are going to want to strap in for this one. The year is 1721. Cotton Mather, the Puritan minister you might remember from his enthusiastic participation in the Salem witch trials, owned an enslaved man named Onesimus, and Onesimus was about to teach him something that would save thousands of lives and nearly get Mather killed in the process. So how did a Puritan minister famous for witch hunts end up championing a medical technique from Africa? Let me set the scene for you. Cotton Mather was one of the most educated men in Boston. Harvard graduate, theologian, prolific writer, the kind of guy who thought he knew everything about everything, because in his world, he kind of did. Then one day he asked Onesimus, the man he enslaved, a simple question. Had he ever had smallpox? Onesimus answered both yes and no, which, if you are Mather, is a very confusing response. So Onesimus explained. He had undergone a procedure back in Africa. Someone had taken material from a smallpox sore and deliberately infected him with it through a small cut in his arm. He got a little sick. Then he got better, and after that, he was immune, at forever. He even showed Mather the scar on his arm as proof. Think of it like getting medical advice from someone society said could not possibly know more than you. Except he did. In colonial terms, that means an enslaved man was teaching one of the most educated men in Boston something he had never heard of. Mather was skeptical at first. Of course he was. But then he read a report from a physician named Emmanuel Timonius about a similar practice in Turkey. The details matched exactly what Onesimus had described. Same procedure, same results. Mather realized 2 things. First, this technique, called variolation, actually worked. Second, Onesimus had known about it long before any European doctor wrote it down. Now, you might think Mather would have dismissed this out of hand. After all, this is the same guy who helped send people to their deaths over accusations of witchcraft. But here is where it gets interesting. Because apparently, the guy who helped condemn people for witchcraft was very open-minded about experimental medicine. Mather became convinced. Variolation could save lives. He just needed the chance to prove it. And that chance was coming. Fast. Now, when a deadly epidemic is raging through your city, you would think doctors would try anything that might work, right? Well, in April 1721, a smallpox epidemic hit Boston like a hammer. People started dying in droves. Panic spread faster than the disease itself. And Cotton Mather saw his opportunity. He approached the 10 physicians practicing in Boston at the time and made his pitch. We have a technique that could save lives. It has been used successfully in Africa and Turkey. We should try it here. 9 of them laughed him out of the room. In colonial terms, that means 9 out of 10 medical professionals told him to go away. But one doctor, Zabdiel Boylston, listened. And Boylston did not just listen. He acted. In June 1721, he inoculated 3 people, his own 6-year-old son and 2 enslaved people he owned. Deliberately infecting your own child with smallpox to prove a point is a level of confidence that honestly belongs in a different century. But it worked. All 3 got mild cases of smallpox and recovered fully. They were now immune. Victory, right? Not exactly. Because Boston did not react with gratitude, they reacted with fury. The public was outraged. Spoiler, they did not react well. People accused Boylston of spreading the disease on purpose, of playing God, of conducting dangerous experiments on the population without consent. Which, to be fair, he kind of was. Boylston had to go into hiding for 2 weeks because angry mobs were actively looking for him. And then someone took things a step further. Someone threw a grenade into Cotton Mather's house. It did not explode. The fuse fell off, but the message was clear. A note attached to it read, "I will inoculate you with this." Completely rational response, obviously. Imagine proposing a treatment in a pandemic, and the response is literal explosives through your window. 10 physicians, 9 said no, 1 said yes. And that one yes was enough to ignite a firestorm. But here is the thing. The outrage was not really about the science. So what was the real problem here? Was it the procedure, or was it who knew about it first? Let me read you what people were actually saying at the time. Yes, some objected on medical grounds. They thought variolation was risky. They thought it interfered with divine providence. That if God wanted you to get smallpox, you should just accept it and die like a good Christian. But the objection that really cut deep was this. The idea that Cotton Mather could have learned something from a slave was offensive to the social order. It is like rejecting a cure for cancer because the researcher did not have the right credentials in your eyes. Except worse, because the credentials they cared about were not medical training or expertise. They were skin color and legal status, in colonial terms. That means the hierarchy of who could teach whom mattered more than saving lives. Mather himself was forced to defend this point explicitly. He wrote, "I don't know why it is more unlawful to learn of Africans how to help against the poison of smallpox than it is to learn of our Indians how to help against the poison of a rattlesnake." Think about that for a second. He had to argue that it was acceptable to learn medicine from non-white people. That was the controversy, not whether the technique worked. It demonstrably did. By the end of the epidemic, the data was clear. Of the people inoculated, about 2% died. Of the people who caught smallpox naturally, about 15% died. Variolation was 7 times safer than doing nothing. Because God forbid an enslaved African knew something a Harvard-educated minister did not. But the resistance was never really about safety. It was about power, about knowledge, about who got to be the expert and who got to be the source. Onesimus brought a medical breakthrough to America that would save thousands of lives. And the response was not gratitude, it was a grenade. Here is what we are left with. Variolation worked. It spread. It eventually became standard practice. Decades later, it would evolve into vaccination as we know it today. Onesimus was right. He was always right. But history does not remember his name the way it remembers Mather's or Boylston's. And that tells you everything you need to know. And that, my curious test subjects, is how one of America's earliest medical breakthroughs almost died because the person who brought it knew too much while being allowed to own too little. Progress. Colonial style. Onesimus saved lives. He brought knowledge that would eventually lead to the vaccines we use today. And in return, he remained enslaved, his name barely remembered, while the men who listened to him got the credit. That is not irony. That is just history. So the next time someone tells you science has no politics, remind them about the man who taught America about vaccines, and the grenade someone threw in response. If this story made you rethink who gets credit in history, hit that subscribe button, my curious test subjects. I have got plenty more where that came from. And if you want to support the lab and get early access to experiments like this one, check out the link in the description. Until next time, keep questioning everything, especially the people who say you should not.